Imagine you cannot feel your fingers, not because it is merely cold outside, but because the temperature has dropped to 30 degrees below zero, and you have been lying still in the same position for 6 hours, afraid that if you move even an inch, someone will see you, someone will shoot you. Around you, there is almost nothing left. The building you are sheltering in was once a school. Now, it is a skeleton. 4 walls with no ceiling, half a floor, rubble where children used to sit and read. The windows are gone. In their place, there is wind, a constant cutting Siberian wind that moves through the ruins as if the ruins themselves are breathing. In the distance, though distance is a strange word here because everything feels close, suffocatingly close, you can hear the rumble of artillery. You have been hearing it for so long that silence would terrify you more. The sound of war has become the sound of being alive. When the guns go quiet, it usually means something is about to get much worse. You are hungry. You have been hungry for weeks. The last thing you ate that could genuinely be called food was 3 days ago. And you try not to think about it because thinking about food makes the hunger worse. And the hunger is already bad enough to distort your thinking, to make you see things, to make the simplest decisions feel impossible. You do not know what day it is? You have lost count. You know it is winter, the winter of 1942 and 1943, a Russian winter that feels like punishment, like the earth itself has decided to participate in the killing. You know you're in a city called Stalingrad. You know there are men who want you dead on the other side of that wall, and you want them dead too. And in between you and them, there are perhaps 30 meters of broken concrete and frozen dirt and the bodies of men who ran out of luck before you did. This is Stalingrad, not the Stalingrad of textbooks, not the battle with arrows on maps and strategic footnotes. This is the Stalingrad of the men who were there, the ones who lived, the ones who didn't, and the ones who survived only in body, leaving some other part of themselves behind in the rubble forever. This is the story of the deadliest battle in the history of human warfare. Part 1. The city and its meaning. To understand why Stalingrad happened, you first have to understand what the war looked like in the summer of 1942. Germany had invaded the Soviet Union in June of 1941 in an operation called Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history. In the opening months, the German advance was staggering. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers were captured or killed. Entire army groups collapsed. The city of Kiev fell. Leningrad was surrounded and put under siege. By the autumn of 1941, German forces stood within sight of Moscow. But Moscow did not fall. The Soviet Union did not collapse as Hitler had predicted. Instead, the winter of 1941 brought German forces to a grinding halt. And the spring of 1942 brought a Soviet counterattack that pushed them back. The war in the East had transformed from a blitzkrieg into something slower, deeper, and far more brutal. By the spring of 1942, Hitler was faced with a strategic choice. His generals debated priorities. Some argued for a renewed push on Moscow. Others saw opportunity in the south, in the vast territories beyond the Don River. Hitler chose the south. The plan was called Case Blue, Fall Blau. The objective was to seize the oil fields of the Caucasus region, which Germany desperately needed to fuel its war machine. Without that oil, the panzers would stop. The aircraft would be grounded. The war would eventually die of thirst. Taking the Caucasus was not a strategic luxury. For Germany, it was a necessity. But to reach the Caucasus and hold it, Army Group South needed to secure its northern flank. It needed to control the Volga River. And on the western bank of the Volga, there was a city. That city was Stalingrad. The Volga is not just a river, it is the longest river in Europe. And in 1942, it was an artery. It carried supplies, reinforcements, fuel, and ammunition. It connected the industrial heartland of Russia to the south. Control the Volga, and you controlled the flow of Soviet war-making capacity. Cutting the Volga at Stalingrad would be like cutting a spine. But there was something else about Stalingrad that made it special, something that went beyond geography. The city bore the name of the Soviet leader himself, Joseph Stalin. It had been named in his honor in 1925, when he was still consolidating power. By 1942, his name was everywhere, in propaganda posters, in speeches, in the chants of soldiers going into battle. Stalin was not merely a politician, he was a symbol, a near mythological figure around whom the Soviet war effort had been organized. Losing a city named after Stalin, losing it to the Germans, losing it on the Volga, would be a psychological catastrophe. Not just militarily, symbolically. It would tell the Soviet people and the world that the system had failed, that the man the city was named after could not protect it. For that reason, once the Germans began advancing toward Stalingrad, Stalin issued an order. Order number 227. Its unofficial title was brutal in its simplicity, not one step back. There would be no retreat. Commissars were empowered to shoot soldiers who fled. Penal battalions were created. Men accused of cowardice or disobedience would be sent to the most dangerous sections of the front as punishment. The message was clear. You hold or you die. There would be no honorable withdrawal, no tactical repositioning, no living to fight another day. Stalingrad would be held or it would be lost with every last man defending it. Across the lines, Adolf Hitler had come to a similar conclusion from the opposite direction. What had begun as a strategic objective, securing the Volga crossing, had become something personal. Stalingrad carried the name of his enemy. Taking it would not just be a military victory. It would be a humiliation of Stalin himself, visible to the entire world. Hitler became increasingly inflexible about the city, increasingly resistant to any suggestion that it might not be worth the cost. Two leaders, two cities worth more than their geography. Two armies about to collide in the ruins of a place that would consume them both. The advance. In the summer of 1942, the German Sixth Army was one of the most powerful military formations in the world. It was commanded by General Friedrich Paulus, a meticulous, highly educated officer who had risen through the German military hierarchy through intelligence, professionalism, and loyalty. He was not a theatrical figure. He did not seek glory. He was a planner, a thinker, a man who believed in preparation and order. In many ways, he was the wrong kind of man to be at the center of what was coming. The Sixth Army included some of the finest soldiers Germany had produced. Many of them had been fighting since 1939. They had crossed Poland, France, Belgium, and deep into the Soviet Union. They had won campaigns that military historians still study. In the summer of 1942, many of them genuinely believed the war in the East would end that year. The mood, despite the setbacks of the previous winter, was one of cautious confidence. Germany had recovered. Germany was advancing again. Perhaps this would be the final push. The advance toward Stalingrad began in late June and accelerated through July. The German sweep across the Don steppes was fast and dramatic. Soviet resistance was fierce in places but often outmaneuvered. The open terrain was German armor territory. The panzer divisions could operate at full effectiveness, flanking and encircling Soviet formations before they could consolidate a defense. Photographs from this period show German soldiers sitting on the backs of tanks, smoking cigarettes, squinting into the sun. There is an air of something approaching casualness. Villages pass. Dust rises from roads that stretch to the horizon. Men wave at the camera. It is summer. The war seems winnable. By August, German forces had reached the Don River at several points and were beginning to cross. The city of Stalingrad was visible on the horizon, a long industrial sprawl along the western bank of the Volga, dominated by three enormous factory complexes. The tractor factory, which in peacetime had made tractors but had been converted to produce tanks. The barricades factory, a massive ordnance plant, and the Red October steel factory, a fortress of metal and concrete whose very construction made it a defensive position waiting to happen. On August 23, 1942, the German Luftwaffe launched one of the most devastating air raids of the entire war. Hundreds of aircraft descended on Stalingrad over the course of several hours. The city, which still held hundreds of thousands of civilians, was set ablaze. The wooden neighborhoods near the river burned completely. Entire districts were reduced to ash. The Volga itself seemed to burn. Oil storage tanks had been hit, and flaming oil poured into the river, creating a nightmarish spectacle visible for miles. Estimates suggest that tens of thousands of civilians may have died in that single day of bombing. But something unexpected happened as a result of that raid. The destruction of Stalingrad's buildings, its walls, its floors, its multi-story structures, created something the German military had not fully anticipated: rubble. And rubble, it turned out, was one of the great equalizers of urban warfare. When buildings stand, tanks and artillery can operate effectively. The open angles, the clear lines of fire, these favor the attacker with superior equipment. But when buildings collapse into mountains of broken concrete, brick, and twisted metal, the terrain becomes something else entirely. It becomes a maze, a network of hiding places, choke points, sniper positions, and ambush corridors. It becomes a place where a single man with a weapon and knowledge of the terrain can stop a unit of 20. The Germans had bombed Stalingrad into rubble, and in doing so, they had turned it into a trap.